Hey everyone, Daphne here. I'm a mom of two, a volleyball coach, and a handcrafted enthusiast. In today's video, I'm talking about the controversial sleep training. What is it? Why should you do it? When should you do it? And why is it important? Let's get into it. Sleep training is incredibly controversial. If you're part of any mom group, be it on Reddit or Facebook, you'll find two really strong camps. One that says sleep training is awesome and you should do it, and the other basically says that you're torturing your child. The truth is that there really is no right or wrong answer, and a lot of people will hire a sleep consultant or sleep expert, but actually you're the best sleep expert for your child. Every child is different, even within a family. Siblings can be very different, and only you will know what works best for your family, your situation, and your child. At the end of the day, one common theme is that sleep is a learned skill. Your baby and you will learn how to be apart from each other or how to sleep and be soothed without each other. Baby sleep is a learned skill, whether you assist actively in that or not. And really, what's important to note is that any method of training, whether it's highly involved or not, is sleep training. No matter what method you pick, whether it's from common methods like Cry It Out or Extinction or Ferber or Rock to Sleep or contact sleeping, that is sleep training, whatever method you choose. Every mom is going to have different preferences for what they're comfortable with and what they can do in their current situation. Whichever one you choose, you do not need to justify that decision to anybody. All that being said, some methods seem to be a little bit better at doing certain things, like getting your baby to fall asleep without help or getting your baby to sleep for longer stretches. Personally, I've tried like every method on both of my kids, and I'll talk about the 4 most common methods and my experience with all of them. I preface all of this by challenging you to think about your own sleep. So if I think about just even the last week, not really one of those days did I fall asleep at the same time. Many of those nights I woke up several times throughout the night. Some of those days I woke up earlier, some later. Sometimes I had much more restful sleep. Sometimes I was awake in the middle of the night. It is really unrealistic to expect that once you sleep train your baby or start that process, that they're just going to get it and they're going to get it forever. If your baby deviates from whatever plan you had, try to muster up as much patience as you can and approach it from a compassionate standpoint. Your baby is not trying to victimize you. So when should you start? There are some moms who will report that their baby started sleeping through the night at like a month old, which is fantastic. If that's you, great. Most babies will go through what's called a sleep regression several times within the first 1.5 years, 2 years of their life. A sleep regression is a notable change in your baby's sleep patterns, good or bad. So for me, at 4.5 to 5.5 months for my kids, that looked like suddenly waking up after 45 minutes of sleep every time, no matter what it was, if it was a nap or overnight. What's important to note about the first sleep regression that happens around that 4.5 to 5.5 month time period is that supposedly this is when babies learn to consolidate or join together sleep cycles. A baby's sleep cycle is typically something like 45 minutes. So around this time, you might notice that at 45 minutes they wake up, and they may or may not need some help getting back to sleep for the next cycle. Prior to this regression, your baby's body kind of just takes over and they're developing so much that your baby may just learn to fall asleep on their own. But at that regression time, they may or may not need your help to go back to sleep. Some need no intervention at all and can figure it out. Great. Some babies may need you to help create an ideal environment so that they can easily go back to sleep. An ideal environment might include things like blackout blinds or a sound machine, or maybe they need a soother or a sucker. At the end of the day, what you're trying to accomplish is to let baby know that after 45 minutes, it is not time to wake up and play. Can you sleep train before the 5-month regression? Yeah, you can, but As with any regression that they may experience from now until 2 years of age, you may actually have to retrain them if that regression hits them hard. You can put off sleep training, but at the end of the day, it's always easiest for them to adapt when they're younger. This is because they'll be less conscious of their surroundings, like sound, light, and whether or not you're around. They're also less mobile and maybe not as loud. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the best time to sleep train is when you are comfortable and feel ready to do so. So let's get into the 4 most common methods of sleep training. We'll start at one end of the spectrum and go all the way to the other side. The first method is contact sleeping. This is exactly what it sounds like. So it's that your baby needs physical contact with you or your bed in order to fall asleep and stay asleep. Moms who use this method often practice bed sharing, which is a subset of co-sleeping. Co-sleeping just means sleeping in the same room, whether it's a bassinet or a crib in your room. Bed sharing actually physically means being in the same bed. One of the great things about contact sleeping is that it promotes breastfeeding. So if your baby is hungry at any time, you can just quickly put them on the breast, feed them, and try to go back to sleep. Also, it can really foster a very intimate and close relationship with your baby, especially in those early days. There are definitely some drawbacks to contact sleeping. Of course, no matter how safe you make an environment, you may be worried about the risk of SIDS. In addition, bed sharing might be difficult to wean off of later on. In my experience, sometimes this is what I just had to do. I didn't actually choose to contact sleep, but sometimes I just had to. Like if my son needed extra comfort on a certain day, I just had to. And at the end of the day, it was really nice and intimate for us, but I knew long term that this wasn't going to be a good solution for me. That being said, some parents choose to bed share for a very long time. So I know some moms who at age 7, 8 are still bed sharing with their kids. If that works for you, go ahead, do it. Who cares? One tip if you are going to contact sleep is to try to do your own research on what it would take to create a safe bed sharing experience. I'm not an expert and I'm pretty sure I've done this wrong, but I think it involves making sure that there's no soft surfaces around. That includes blankets or pillows or anything like that. Also, try to purchase sleepwear that's going to promote breastfeeding. So for me, that meant a nightgown that opened up completely in the front. I could just quickly unbutton it, feed her, and then get her back down. Okay, next up is rock to sleep or feed to sleep. Rock to sleep is exactly what it sounds like. So it means that your baby needs to be in motion in order to fall or stay asleep. So sometimes this can mean being held in your arms, being rocked gently back and forth, or maybe even sitting in a car in order to fall asleep. I guess this motion is supposed to mimic what it was like in the womb when you were walking and they were gently being rocked as you would walk. Feed to sleep, again, is exactly what it sounds like. In order to fall asleep, your baby needs to be either breastfed or given a bottle. A subset of this would be dream feeding, which is when you basically creep into your baby's room when you're about to fall asleep. So that's maybe like several hours after their last bottle. And you pick them up and it's still dark and you try not to wake them and you just kind of shove your boob or your bottle into their mouth and feed them. And they'll be awake enough to drink the bottle and then you put them back to sleep and you leave. One of the benefits of rock or feed to sleep is that if you're trying to get them to sleep and you've done this thing, you know that that's not what the issue is. So if you're rocking them and they're not sleeping, you know that it's not a comfort issue. Similarly, if they've been fed and they still won't settle down, you at least know it's not because of hunger. And of course, rocking or feeding your baby to go to sleep can create, again, that really intimate and nice relationship with your baby. Some of the cons of this method are that it's kind of hard actually to maneuver. So if you're holding your baby and now you have to put them down, it's kind of like this ninja dance that you have to do in order to get them into the crib and convince them that you're still holding them and then sneak out and leave. Even worse if they have to fall asleep in a car and now you have to unbuckle them and get them out and keep them prone and then lie them in their crib and then leave. Same thing with dream feeding. Sometimes it's really difficult to get them out of bed and then keep everything quiet and not wake them, feed them, and then put them back in. Additionally, it can be quite hard to wean off of a dream feed. In my experience, rocking and feeding to sleep felt like a really natural thing to do. My son loved being rocked to sleep, and I felt like I was getting extra cuddle time with him, and it created a really nice and quiet thing for us to do before he went to sleep. My daughter took the dream feed quite well in that I would give her her 8 o'clock bottle, and then I would go in again around midnight when I was going to sleep. Take her out quietly, feed her, put her back down, and then she would wake up around 6 or 7 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. But these were not really sustainable solutions for me. When my son got heavier, it was much harder to rock him to sleep and to have him remain sleeping when I transferred him to his bed. And for my daughter, it was very challenging when we tried to drop the dream feed. We didn't really know how we were supposed to just stop giving her food at that time. I think what we ended up doing was we just cold turkey, just didn't give it to her one night. And I think it was pretty challenging for a few days because she would wake up expecting it, or she reverted back to waking up at 4 a.m. So there are challenges with dream feeding for sure, even though it did actually work for us for some time. One of my tips for rock and feed to sleepers is to try to just let them settle after you've put them down, even if they kind of, wiggle or make some noise. After that rock or feed to sleep, put them down, and even if they fuss a little bit, try to just give them some breathing room to see if they can figure it out themselves. Okay, so now this brings us to the Ferber method. There's a lot of different versions of Ferber if you were to look online, but essentially the theory for all of them is the same. What you're doing is allowing baby alone time to try to soothe themselves back to sleep, but you're going back into the room at extended intervals, increasingly extended intervals, just to reassure them or to do check-ins. Some versions of this say put your baby down and let them cry for 5 minutes, and then you go in and you stay in there for 30 seconds. And then you leave and then you let them cry for 10 minutes. And then you go in and you stay for 30 seconds and you leave. And then the next time you wait 15 minutes. And basically you're extending that time. And you always set how long your stay is. And then there's rules about those stays. So in some versions, they'll say that you don't pick up your baby at all. There's some that will say you can touch your baby or rub their tummy, or you can stroke their hair. Some will say you can talk to your baby. Some will say don't talk to your baby. At the end of the day, I think no matter which way you choose or which routine you choose, so long as you're consistent, that's going to be key to sleep training your baby. One of the benefits of Ferber is that a lot of people will report that when it's done consistently and done well, that they see results quite quickly, as in within like a couple days or a week. The Ferber method also teaches baby not to have any associations with you in order to sleep. And at the same time, it allows you the opportunity to go in the room and to have less anxiety about leaving your baby. You get to go in and you set the rules as to how you will check in on them, what that looks like, and then you leave and you give them another opportunity to do so. Of course, there are some drawbacks to this. For some moms, they cannot stand to hear their baby cry. That's a normal maternal instinct. You are trained to be able to respond to your baby crying. In addition, because there's no contact to sleep, sometimes some moms can feel like they're losing out on intimate time where they could be holding their baby in order to sleep. Personally, in my experience, Ferber really worked for us. For my son, we used 5-minute intervals. So our first crying interval was 5 minutes, and then our in the room time was 1 minute. And then it was 10 minutes wait, and then 1 minute, and 15 minutes wait, and then 1 minute. And then I think it was 15 minutes after that. I don't think we extended beyond 15. During the 1 minute check-ins, we did not pick him up and we did not speak to him, but we would go in and we would like rub his tummy or we would stroke his hair for about 1 minute, and then we would leave. The first day of Ferber, he cried for 45 minutes straight, and that includes our check-ins. And then on the second day, I think he cried for like 15 minutes, and by the third day, he had it. He fell asleep and was fine. He was sleep trained at about 5.5 months old, And from about that third day on, he slept from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. And he's about 3 right now, and he roughly still has this schedule. My daughter was a much more dramatic crier, and so I made her pattern include a lot more check-ins. And I made the time frames much shorter. So I actually did increasing by 1 minute intervals. So I let her cry for 1 minute, and then I went in for 1 minute. Then I let her cry for 2 minutes, then I went in for 1 minute. I let her cry for 3 minutes, then I went in for 1 minute, and so on and so on and so on. So again, you could be a little bit flexible with it yourself and figure out what works for you. I wanted to go in to check in on her more often, so I designed that routine for myself. She ultimately took about a week in order to get accustomed to it, but after that week, then she got it and she didn't require any check-ins at all. I could just put her down and I could leave. If you're going to try the Ferber method, my number one tip is to allow yourself to be flexible, but once you pick that schedule, to stick with it. So you don't have to go 5, 10, 15. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Figure out how comfortable you are and what you want to do and what level of engagement you want to have within those check-ins, and then stick to that plan and make sure everyone that is doing that sticks to that same plan. So whether it's a spouse, a partner, a grandparent, a caregiver, make sure everyone is on the same page. And then with that, we come to extinction. Extinction is sometimes also called cry it out, and basically that means once you put your kid down, you're going to leave them in their room safely to cry it out until they fall asleep. Of course, you've ensured that everything that they should need at that time, they have. So maybe they've already been fed, maybe they've been changed, and the environment is the correct temperature, and everything is fine. They are solely crying because they are not used to being away from you. One of the benefits of extinction training is that, of course, it's very hands-off for parents. So if you are not comfortable holding a baby or you don't want to do any kind of contact sleeping, this is the one for you. From what I understand is if you do extinction training and you do it consistently, it can be very effective very quickly. But at the same time, if you are not consistent, it's very confusing for babies. So if you let them go for like half an hour or 45 minutes and then you go in and save them, that actually teaches them that if I cry for long enough, someone will come. And so they won't learn to use that time to quiet themselves down, which is the whole point. The biggest downfall of cry it out is that, of course, it can be so difficult to hear your baby cry consistently and constantly, and feel like you have to do nothing about it. Some parents will feel totally fine with having their baby cry because they know that they are safe and that they have everything that they need. Other parents or grandparents or caregivers might feel nervous or anxious about hearing baby cry for that long and will try to go in and save them. Again, it's really important that if you choose this method, that you understand it comes with the condition that you don't eventually go in and save them, because essentially then you aren't actually using this method. So in my experience, this is the method that I've used the very, very least. At one point, my daughter needed to be re-sleep trained because she went through a sleep regression. And Ferber wasn't really working, so we decided to just cry it out. And the reason we did it was because we realized that my daughter actually did not want us to soothe her. We realized that she actually wanted to independently fall asleep on her own. So if we were in the room or we tried to rock her, or we tried to intervene in any way, she actually would get more worked up. And we realized at some point that just letting her cry for however long she wanted meant she actually would fall asleep faster. What started out as 10, 15 minutes straight of really inconsolable crying eventually turned into 5 minutes, and currently is now we just put her down and there's no noise whatsoever. She just wants to sleep on her own. She wants you to leave the room. Again, this is not my choice of method, but at the end of the day, I knew as her mom what worked best for her, what she wanted, and I could feel this intuitively as a maternal instinct that this was correct for her. My number one tip, I'll repeat it one more time. If you're going to use this method, you have to be incredibly consistent, which makes it very difficult to choose this method if in fact that's the way you want to go. Just like any other skill that you would learn, whether it's in a sport or it's an academic skill, You need that repetition to learn what you're trying to do. And at the end of the day, if baby keeps getting saved after varying times of crying, that's what they're going to learn. Is not that if you leave them that they're going to fall asleep, but that if you leave them long enough and they make enough noise, eventually someone will come save them. If you choose this method, you may find that there are people who will disagree with you. And again, it's totally your decision if you choose to pick this method, but consistency is going to be key, and that's with all caregivers for your child. So there you have it. Those are the 4 most common methods for sleep training. And sometimes what you'll find is there's some maybe combinations of 2 of the methods together. And you'll find a lot of resources online. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to be the expert and you're going to know what feels right for you and what feels right for your baby. And maybe you just have to be a little bit more flexible, or maybe you have to be a little bit more forgiving or patient if your baby goes a different route than what you would want to happen. Each method has its own difficulties and its benefits, and I've tried to sum it all up in a chart right here. And you can always head to my website where I'll put the whole transcript for this blog as well as the chart so you can figure out which method is right for you. My very last tip is to try not to be so hard on yourself. Yes, everyone needs to be sleep trained. But again, what that looks like is different for everybody. Even if you choose no method, that is a form of sleep training. That is training them how you prefer or how you think is correct for them to sleep. So be patient and forgiving and kind to yourself, and again, try to find some patience and muster it up where you can. It's a skill, it's a learned skill both for you and for baby. I hope you found this video helpful. If you're in any stage of planning pregnancy, or maybe you're like super bursty, I encourage you to purchase the pregnancy planner, which is now available for order on my website. This planner has fillable calendars for every step of the journey from day 1 to week 40. It has checklists to help plan out every corner, every item of your pregnancy, your delivery, and your baby's needs. It also has weekly and monthly status pages where you can keep track of baby's growth and your symptoms, as well as your mental health, which is super helpful when you're visiting your medical care provider. It's mirrored off exactly what I created for myself during my pregnancies, and it makes a wonderful gift for a mom-to-be or as a personal keepsake. If you have any comments about sleep training, or you have questions that maybe I can answer, not as an expert, but as a mom who's gone through it twice, leave your comments below and I'll try to get back to you. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. You can visit me on Instagram at daffodils.designs and at pregnancyplanner.ca. Thanks for watching. See you next time.